And we are on, except the camera's too far away. You can't see me. Yep. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom to you online. Thank you for joining us. My lovely wife will be with us momentarily, but we should get started. So before we do anything else, we should pray. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Are you joining us, Benjamin? Okay, thank you. Hannah, would you pray for us?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, God, for this day. And please help us have a nice Bible study today. In Jesus' name, Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So today, of course, is what?
Saturday.
Good. January 11th, 2025.
Really?
Yeah. Or if you can believe it, it is actually the 11th day of the Jewish month of...
Shabbat.
No.
Well,
Tevet.
Tevet.
Yes,
Tevet, right?
Tevet.
87,
85.
85, right? Good. Very nice. And it's Shabbat, so Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And we do it every week, which means what?
Peaceful rest.
A peaceful rest to you today. I hope that's the case. Always we want to give updates about the continuing war in Israel, which rages on. We are in the 463rd day of the war. Anything big happened this past week?
No,
I have not checked the news ever.
I
Past
don't.
months.
Okay, so there's a couple things going on. First of all, our hostages are still being held, right? This past week, we did discover the bodies of 2 of our hostages, which we discovered had been killed actually a while ago, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So they're off the list, so we're down to about 98 hostages-ish. We don't know if they're alive, where they are, but they're still there. Also, this past week, we got continuing word that the Biden administration is trying to make a last-ditch effort to find a ceasefire, pressuring Israel to compromise and agree to a ceasefire with Hamas. Why this last-ditch effort, do you think?
Ooh, don't know that one.
I have no idea. We've been trying to make ceasefires the entire past 2 years.
Well, sure, but could it be because Biden wants to make himself look good and be like, yay, I did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the case. What did Trump say concerning the hostages with the inauguration coming in about 9 days?
If we don't release the hostages by the time he enters office, it's going to be hard to pay for them.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. He said there'll be hell to pay if Hamas does not release the hostages. So Hamas is trying to get it done. The Biden administration is trying to get it done. But in the past week, as we've been looking at the offers that are going back and forth, is Hamas willing to release all the hostages?
Yeah.
No. So in the Israeli press, the scuttlebutt or the rumor is that Hamas will only be willing to release 34 of the remaining 98 hostages for a ceasefire from Israel. Yeah. Thoughts?
That's
I
stupid.
think we should just send troops to grab our people because they're Americans who are hostages right now. So
Biden doesn't care.
send
I think-
SEALs or something.
I
Like
think
Yeah.
Israel should have just gone and done what we needed to do first day.
that. They definitely dragged it out, and I blame Netanyahu.
We could have gotten this done with the first
I say
week.
this war's getting sick and tiring.
So a couple of weeks ago, the Israeli military did an extraordinary military maneuver in Syria. And they actually snuck in and destroyed a weapons depot underground so that the new authorities in Syria could not get a hold of the weapons and use them against Israel. They did it quick, quiet, and accomplished it. My question is, why couldn't they have done that with the hostages a year ago?
Also, why are they doing everything but help?
Why didn't
though?
they
Like,
even think of
why
it?
are they focusing on Lebanon and Syria when the hostages are still in Palestine?
Well, Lebanon and Syria are threats. We are being
I
attacked
get that.
from Lebanon and Syria.
They're just ignoring the hostages. Like,
Well, Netanyahu is in the middle of a political firestorm right now. Many in Israel are accusing him of deliberately, exactly what you said, Benjamin, dragging this out so he can stay in power while he plays one negotiation against another.
Well, I hate those kind of leaders.
So, we do know that the Israeli military has a capability, which they just proved a couple of weeks ago, to get the hostages. Now, whether or not we know where they are is another
we don't
question.
know. We
But
don't exactly.
I don't know, it's 100
Doubt it.
people almost.
Netanyahu, they have one of the
Hello.
most powerful.
And here is my better half.
security. They found Nazis halfway across the world, but yet they can't find the hostages.
Oh, we can't see you.
In the 60s.
Yeah,
They
it's-
found them in the
it's-
60s.
Right, here we go. All right. There. Now it feels complete.
Oh.
We were just talking about the war and whether or not the accusations against Prime Minister Netanyahu are true, that he's deliberately stretching out this war and not rescuing the hostages, even though the Israeli military and intelligence, Mossad, has the capability of doing so.
I don't think so, because, I mean, he has a Knesset. He has to go through them, to do anything, so it's not just him. They put it all on him, but he can't do anything without the Knesset.
That's not true. He has emergency powers.
He has emergency powers, but they would have revoked those by now.
Have you
You
read
mean
their-
invoked
Have
those?
you read
Invoked.
their
No, revoked from. They would
Like
have.
taking those powers away from him?
Yeah. They
If
would
you
have
look
like
at
done
the-
something
So if you
to.
look at their government's they don't have a constitution, but their thing set up like their Magna Carta. He can do what it takes to protect Israel, but he's just not doing what it takes to protect Israel.
Well, I mean, he's trying to balance. I mean, we could sit here and say all we want.
It is protect Israelis, not necessarily Israel.
Well, we could sit here and say all we want, but we don't know what it's like to have not only your own Knesset, your own people, but the rest of the world, telling you to do all this stuff. He has to do what's best for his, and he has to go with the supplies that he has. I mean,
They just took out was it Syrian
Yeah.
thing?
Weapons depot.
Dad just said himself that they have the capability to get back the hostages. They're just not.
well, maybe they're.
This is an L on Netanyahu.
You guys turning on Benny
I'm
already?
turning on Benny. I turned on Benny the day October 7th happened.
Oh, well, you didn't even give him a chance.
I didn't give him a chance because they knew it was going to happen. It's like they literally knew it was going to happen.
So how are you?
Every government
But-
does that kind of stuff.
But you have to
These are
understand that all the president's prime ministers rely on their sources. So if
The
their
Israeli
sources aren't doing anything, like
The
his
Israeli
chief of
government has a
staff, or
policy. The Israeli government has a policy that even the most wild of claims and threats has to be investigated. They clearly failed.
no, but that's not the president's fault. The president has.
It's the prime minister's fault.
Thank you, Joe. The president has to rely on the people that he puts in those positions to handle that stuff.
I understand, and I would give him leniency if even a year after the war started, they got their hostages back. Instead, Dad himself admitted he's dragging it out to keep his power.
What
he knows
purpose
the minute
would
this
that
war
be?
ends,
What purpose
will-
would that serve them? That would serve them no
he's been able to
purpose.
attack Syria, he's been able to attack Lebanon, all these, but not the hostages.
Well, Syria and Lebanon were attacking us before.
No, I get it. What I'm saying is
so-
he's been able to create these small military maneuvers, but does not get the hostages back.
But he doesn't know. How does he know where the
They know
hostages
that
are?
They tracked Nazis in the 60s halfway across the world.
Yeah, but it
in
took them
South
years.
America.
It took them years.
Not
days.
thousands of years. Mom, what I'm saying though
Well,
is
the war isn't 1,000
Israel
years.
it's closer to home than South America. That's where the Nazis were hiding, was South America. What I'm saying is they could find them halfway across the world, but they can't find. Mom, they know where the hostages are. They've gotten hostages out. They have what, 98 hostages left or something like that.
98 hostages left.
They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, but
Netanyahu
as soon
knows
as they
exactly.
find them, then they're either killed or they get them back. But
yeah, they
they're
get-
spreading them out. It's not like
I understand,
the
but-
Nazis. It's kind of hard. I mean, it
Nazis
took them
will spread out.
years to find them.
So we will move on. Thank you both for your loquacious opinions.
They're still trying to find
But
them.
we'll move on.
Netanyahu was not just a
we'll
traitor
we'll
to
move on.
Huh?
Israel, but to Jews and Americans.
We need to move on. Sorry. Yes. Speaking with a woman who was from Israel just a few days ago, she also, who used to be a very ardent supporter of Netanyahu and thanked God that he was in office when this happened, because he's more, love Israel, defend Israel than many of the prime ministers we've had in the past. She's now thinking, you know what? This is going on too long, and if they could have done a special military operation in Syria, why can't they do it in the Gaza Strip?
Yeah, but
They have
I
done
mean,
so many special operations before. I'm surprised they didn't do it for today.
but we're
Netanyahu
doing
wants
we're.
Israel. Mom, the minute this war ends, he has no chance.
Oh, yeah, he's over. His
I
political
know.
career.
I'm
So
not saying
it
that,
would
but what
make
I'm
sense
saying
just
is we're
logically
looking
for
at
him.
it. We're looking at it through the layman's,
The late mom.
the
if you
lay
talk
person's.
to a
You know
Sabra, they would know.
who?
Dad talks to a Sabra, they would know.
But she's been here for
Okay,
how many
so-
years? She's been here for 20 years.
She
doesn't-
still has family and friends in Israel with whom she speaks every day.
Yes, but of course, everybody that isn't in a governmental position thinks that.
Mom, the
but
thing
they
is this-
don't know all of the ins and outs and all the intricate details that go into
Mom.
all these raids and stuff like that. So I'm not going to sit here and say he's doing a poor job. I'm not going to say it because I mean Vietnam took how many years, and you know
I understand,
we're
but
still
that was
fighting.
us. I'm talking about
Us? What's the difference?
Mom, the minute
War takes time.
the minute the October 7th happened and Americans were taken, it became our business.
We have to move on. So, meanwhile, continuing with this vein of news, anti-Semitism around the world continues to increase. It's not really in the news as much as it was last summer, but it's there. This past week, a swastika was drawn or painted on the side of a synagogue in Australia. You can see a picture of it here. Awful, horrible thing. And we are hearing more and more groanings from our very own homegrown anti-Semite Candace Owens, who continues to make bombastic and foolish statements. Not only does she believe in things like the moon landing was faked, but she's now come out very adamantly against Jews in general and Israel specifically. And for whatever reason, it seems every week she comes up with a new statement that's just more stupid than the last. And she wasn't always like this. I don't know what happened.
She went down the far right rabbit hole.
Yes, she did. And it was not just the far right, though.
I understand, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the far and hall.
Okay.
We're trying to make it about
Right. But we find anti-Semitism on both the left and the right
I
now.
understand, but
So,
sorry,
yeah.
I
We're not going to squelch any opinions here today.
understand, but
You're squelching.
We're not squelching.
You are. So both the left and the right are participating in anti-Semitism in the United States now. And every week, Candace Owens makes a new stupid statement. Can anybody tell me what she said this past week?
She said that Joseph Mengele didn't experiment on children.
Yeah, Joseph Mengele, the notorious evil doctor of Auschwitz, did not experiment on Jewish children, after all, even though abundant evidence tells us that he did. So pray for Candace Owens, because if she keeps coming against God's people like this, it's going to look very bad for her. Oh, look, there's a picture of her with Kanye West. All right.
Trying to do their Kanye best.
I miss the old Kanye.
Interestingly, Benjamin brings up a good point. We now have virulent anti-Semitism on both the right and left political spectrums of the United States, which is also reflected overseas in other Western nations, right? So, one thing the people of the world can unite about is their common hatred of the Jewish people. And it continues to be everywhere. That's why we need your prayers. Your prayers for everything. For Israel, for the hostages, for the Jewish people. It's rough out there right now. Okay. Anything else about the war, about the upsurge in global anti-Semitism since the start of the war last year?
No, I mean, nope.
No.
All I have to say is if you're anti-Semitic and you're Christian, then you need to give our Jesus back and our Bible.
What do you mean?
Because I mean, if there are Christians that are even, anti-Semitic.
Are you saying there's anti-Semitism in the church?
Oh, definitely. Yes.
What?
So give us our Jesus back, give us our Bible back, and start calling yourself by something else, because, you can't be Christ-like if you're against Christ, who was a Jew and came for the lost sheep of Israel.
Still is a Jew. He's still alive.
Well, yeah, but I mean, in the Bible and everything. So,
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Can you give us some examples of anti-Semitism in the church?
Well, I think,
The Inquisition.
huh?
The Inquisition.
In the modern church, Joshua.
Well, I think that a lot of times, one, there's like the Israel replacement theology, and then there's like people who attribute themselves as the Jewish people, but they're really not. And three, there are people that won't even pray for Israel. I mean, they don't even talk about Israel, and a lot of times they won't even talk about the old covenant because they think the old covenant's done away with. That's anti-Semitic because that's the whole founding of the old New Testament.
Okay. And that was a perfect segue into our Bible study today. Anti-Semitism in the church, right? And I hate to have to do this. I can't believe I have to say this for him, but I'm not church bashing. Okay? We are Christians. We believe in Yeshua the Messiah. Yes, we're ethnically Jewish. Anyone that believes in Jesus should be the ethnic Jews, right, of all people. But we are part of the universal church, or the group of people who believe in Yeshua and are born again. So it pains me to say this, but this is also increasing and has, since the war started on October 7th, 2023, anti-Semitism in the church. All right. So you were providing us some examples of that.
Don't get me started on anti-Semitism. Mom, you go first. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. I already gave
So
it a couple.
your mom was saying things like replacement theology, and we'll look at each of these, right? One that you didn't mention was BDS.
What's
right?
BDS?
Boycott, divest.
Oh,
And
right.
sanction, yeah, Israel. What's another one?
Another one is that what's that organization where they send to Orthodox Jews that
That's not the church. That's run by an Orthodox Jewish guy in Israel.
no, I thought it was like one of the pastors here who started that organization.
No, you're thinking of that pastor from San Antonio. That's not the same organization.
Oh, okay. There's also, like people attributing themselves as Jews but are not.
Can you give me an example?
Replacement.
Well, it's like Egyptians or like
No, that's like
black
that's-
people
It's not
or
really
the
church, though, 'cause
tip
they don't
or
believe.
original.
Right.
Well, technically, because they're taking away the ethnicity of another person, so they're
Well, that's more like a replacement theology, right? They're replacing Israel with themselves.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So we have replacement theology, we have the BDS movement, and we'll talk about all this. What else? What other type of anti-Semitism do you see in the church?
They eliminate the Old Testament from their teachings,
Okay.
or if they don't not teach on it, they try to pick and choose from it, and then say that we're not under the law anymore. So they kind of like pick and choose from the Old Testament, and then
It's like a
Pla-
erasure,
right all the blessings and stuff.
like a Jewish erasure, like
Right.
Jesus was not Jewish, or the Old Testament doesn't count anymore. That would count as
Yeah.
Jewish
Right.
erasure.
So we have four primary things that we've discussed. It's the replacement theology. It's the BDS Israel movement. It's accusations of genocide against Israel or open support of Palestine. Palestine is in quotes because there is no country Palestine and there is no ethnicity Palestine. It was made up and has been used since the 1960s. And elimination of the Old Testament. Anything else?
Not to say that the churches will have to be telling the truth.
I wish the
truthful.
churches would tell the truth, Anna.
I think Jewish censorship as well. That's the
What do you mean?
like if you have a Jew involved in a Christian church who wants to put up a menorah or something. It's a very off the top of my head example. Like say a Jew's getting involved with a Christian church, they want to put up a menorah for some kind of project they're doing.
Yeah.
And then they're forced to take it down because it might offend churchgoers. I would call that Jewish censorship.
Like you've ever experienced anything like that, Benjamin?
No.
spelled
You have
identity.
examples?
Yeah, I always spell things wrong. There we go. So I'll put that under elimination of the Old Testament because that is censorship of the Jewish biblical identity, right? Okay.
I think
And
that-
there's the dog destroying something.
Max just spoke.
Well, anti-Semitism
There you go.
in the church today can be just the attitude towards, like the lack of support for Israel.
Are we commanded to support Israel as a church?
We're commanded to pray for Israel and pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And he says that that Jesus came for the lost sheep of Israel first. And he says also to pray for the Jew. He says also to one of the greatest commands in the New Testament is to go to the Jews,
Let me move our
then
picture
to
here
the
so you guys can
Gentiles
see
and the
this
outer
more clearly.
parts of the
there
world.
There you go. Okay.
So our command first is to go to the Jews. And if we're not doing that, we're disobeying God.
Okay. So anything else then? We have 5 things up here, right? Replacement theology, the BDS movement, accusations of genocide against Israel in support of Palestine, elimination of the Old Testament and censorship of Jewish biblical identity, and lack of support of and love for the Israel and Jewish people. Anything else?
In the church, I think that clears it up. Or that categorizes it pretty well.
Okay. So let's tell a tale here, shall we?
Yep.
Yes. And Joshua's like, nobody's talking, I'll say yes.
I didn't
All
know.
right.
I thought it was.
Yeah. So let's go back to a little town called Memphis, Tennessee,
You were
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
From 2016 to 2018. And this is where we lived, and I'm not going to name the church, but
All in the church.
don't name the church.
Squelching idea.
Yes. But we attended a church there, which is a mainstream Protestant denomination church. It's not some obscure little cult that somebody started in their basement, right? And it's very well known and has millions of adherents around the world. And this church seemed pretty solid, and we got involved. Would somebody like to tell me what happened when we went there? Now, I'll start this by saying, when we attended this church, we did not hide the fact we were Jewish. And some people have told me in the past, you just need to cover that up so you don't offend people or disturb people. I've never been willing to do that. I don't think we should hide
shouldn't have
who
to.
God made us to be. So we attended the church, and we, were very obvious that we were Jewish, but we weren't pushy about it. We just said, hey, we're Jews, we believe in Jesus, we'd like to come. And we started, Joshua, I think you won that. Can you tell us what happened? Joshua?
Yeah. Basically, without giving out too much information, we tried to, we weren't pushing anything. We were just Jews. We were attending there. We were completely helpful.
What do you mean by completely helpful?
We helped them with the services. We helped them with outside service stuff. We were friendly.
So we did a lot of volunteer work at the church, really supported the pastor and his family. Did you get involved in anything in the church?
I did, yeah.
What did you get involved with?
I helped with the setting up services beforehand. I helped with cleaning up. We helped with a Christmas event, I believe.
We did. Your mother planned it from the ground up and even wrote the play for the Christmas thing, which they asked help for. We went and did, mowed the lawn and did basic upkeep and care. I did worship. I was a worship leader there for over a year, and started a Sunday school program when they said they needed help with that. Yosef, I believe you helped with their electronic stuff back in the booth.
I did a Wednesday night
Yes.
cooking.
Okay. You did the cooking on Wednesday night and helped with the outreach. I conducted Bible studies. In fact, this Saturday Bible study was started there at that church. About 7 years ago. Benjamin also was in the midst of all, helping, was Hannah. So we sort of bent over backwards to show support and love. What happened then, Joshua?
Let's say what a new guy entered church.
Okay, a new guy. Was he a guy of influence?
Yes.
Okay.
And he began preaching, he was a pastor.
Was his stepfather?
And
No, I'm not gonna give names. I'm just trying to show the relationship so that way.
Yeah, it was his father-in-law. Yeah,
And,
by him, we're saying the pastor's
let's say
father-in-law.
what afterwards they did not become very friendly towards us.
Well, what did the father-in-law start preaching and teaching in the midst of this church with the pastor's assent?
Not so.
He started.
Go ahead.
He started saying that Israel had been fulfilled.
Israel
that
was done.
they were no longer the chosen people or something like that.
Yeah, he started saying that God was done with us, right? That there really was no place for us anymore, that the church had replaced, there's that replacement theology, that the church had replaced Israel, right? And the pastor, with whom we had a friendship at the time, we really, were trying to support he and his wife, because we knew as a rabbi in Rebbetzin, and you guys grew up with that, how difficult it is to pastor a congregation and serve. So we were trying to help. What was the pastor's response? Did he stand up and say, wait, no, that's not biblical?
Nope.
He didn't say anything.
He didn't say anything. What's that old Latin saying I always throw it at you guys? Queta qui consentire?
Silence.
I was thinking cookie dough egg.
Silence.
Silence implies
Implies
consent. Silence implies consent. Now, after the father-in-law of this pastor at this church that shall remain unnamed, of this major denomination in Memphis, Tennessee, after the father-in-law said that, he came up to me after the Bible study and sort of tapped me on the shoulder and say, I was just trying to get a rise out of you.
You don't do that.
Why would he do that?
Because he was trying to justify why. He was trying to.
Because he wanted to
Cover
get
up.
the local Jew upset to debate him.
What
That was conceit.
what
Meanness.
began to happen after this? So that was sort of the spark that set the fire. What happened then?
We just started
He didn't tell him off. He didn't stop him.
So the pastor did not defend not just the Jewish people, but the Bible, right?
Yeah, the truth.
The truth. What happened to you guys in Sunday school?
Well, they had this. Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
think we were told that Jesus.
I don't
Jesus
know.
killed Jesus.
I don't know if he was there. We
Yeah,
were
I was.
different class.
I was not there, but you told me about it
Yeah,
afterwards.
so we were in. I actually don't remember the name of the kid, but I could describe him.
Yeah.
Like,
don't have to do that.
You
Just
don't
say
have
it,
to- you don't have
kids.
to name
I'm not
them,
gonna dox anyone. I was just trying to walk out the memory. Basically, I don't know if it was like not the teenager class. It was the.
It was a Sunday
It was a
class.
youth.
It
It was
just
a
the
youth
youth
class.
It was a
thing.
young class, yeah.
I helped out with the youth thing because
Mm-hmm.
it was super nice. But like we were wanting something. We had these little booklets. That we
Sunday
had.
school books, right?
Sunday school books.
Sure.
And we were just reading through it, and we were talking about, like going through verses in a lot of translations in the Bible. It says, it talks about like the Jews, as Pharisees.
You're
It
talking
says-
about the Jewish leadership in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Gospels, right? To which it
Yeah.
refers so many times. Yeah.
So when it says that people cried for him to be crucified, it says Jews cried for him to be crucified.
Yeah.
And
Of course, we never give context.
no, obviously there's no context and there's
Yeah.
no transliteration in these little Sunday school flip books.
So did your Sunday school flip book say the Jews killed Jesus?
yeah.
Ah.
It said there was one verse that said like the Jews called for him to be killed. The Jew there was no question. Just and that wasn't my biggest issue because again it's a translation thing and
It's a
I
Sunday school,
have
it's
an
a
issue with
clarify.
that because that's an anti-Semitic
It's a clarify,
translation.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, they should have
I believe
clarified.
that's an anti-Semitic translation. But that's just my opinion. And afterwards, and the Sunday school teacher didn't clarify that either, which I thought was interesting. Although I think I told you that.
Yeah.
They didn't clarify that. But one of the things interesting though was afterwards there was this kid who came up to me, and because it said Jews, and at the time I was wearing my yarmulke, and after that a kid, smallish kid, just came up and was like, "Yo, why did you guys kill Jesus?" And I was shocked. I was like, "Oh, we didn't kill Jesus." And I brought up the Pharisees and the Sadducees and authorities and stuff like that. So that was, I mean, it was ignorance on the kid's part, but I thought it was interesting that there was no clarification in their warning.
Right. The teacher should have been the one to
Yeah.
teach that.
Yeah.
Fact, Jesus himself says, "No one takes my life, but I lay it down." All she had to do was say that. You don't
So-
have you don't have to go into deep, theological things just to say, well, Jesus himself laid himself down.
Well, so
You know?
what's interesting is they were using a book that was popular at that time in that denomination for Sunday school, and it did say in there quite blatantly, because I looked it up in their book, the Jews killed Jesus. And that's a reflection of the common anti-Semitic trope called Jewish deicide. Have you guys heard that before?
Mm-hmm.
This is a theological position that says that the Jews killed Jesus, Jesus is God, therefore Jews killed God. And because of that we as a people in general have brought God's wrath upon us, and God has sort of, are you guys okay?
I need tissue.
Okay. And because of this, we brought God's wrath upon us, and we deserve everything we get, including the Inquisition, the Crusades, the pogroms, the Holocaust, and October 7th, 2023, because we killed God. This has been used as a source of anti-Semitic violence against us for millennia. And to hear it taught and preached and not clarified in a church was very disturbing. And then to have one of those kids come up to you and ask why you killed Jesus, like you were alive 2,000 years ago, right?
Ignoring the fact that a lot of Jewish civilians did follow Jesus.
All his first
Right.
followers were Jewish.
That's why, Paul.
Yeah. So Benjamin, what happened then? What did they do with your yarmulke?
It wasn't
That was
me.
Joshua
Oh,
outside.
Joshua, what did they do with
Yeah,
your
yeah,
yarmulke,
yeah,
Joshua?
definitely, I'm kind of food on the ground.
Oh, and did they play frisbee with it?
They played frisbee. They threw a Having cook at me. They threw a plastic ball on my face.
Well,
Yeah.
that was just that one thing.
Is that one kid?
That one kid.
That one
Yeah. Did anybody from the church stand up and say, "Stop, this is wrong"?
kid. No.
Did any of the other kids come to your defense?
I thought one kid. picked it
One
up and
did.
tried
Yeah,
to-
one kid did pick up a yarmulke and said sorry about that.
Good,
Yeah.
good. The yarmulke, of course, is the traditional Jewish skull cap that we wear. We've had it for over 1,000 years. Can you tell us anything more about the yarmulke, Joshua?
It's a symbolism of humility before God.
Yeah, so we put it on the highest part of our heads, symbolizing submission to the God of Abraham. Right. And it's traditionally only worn by men, but today women can also wear it if they want. So that's nice.
You know, have it in the many
What's
Jewish denominations that replaced the Thor cap, which is kind of disappointing.
Wait, since I'm sorry.
Oh, the Strymel.
Isn't that?
I love Steinmals.
That's just for wintertime, though. That's not.
No,
No, that's all year long.
They
Oh,
do?
Steinmals.
Yeah, these are the Strymels.
Do they have the yarmulke underneath?
Yes.
They are the ugliest thing. They look like cat boxes.
I love these. These are great.
Did you see them?
Yeah, these
Yeah,
are.
she should have a
They're
picture.
what, mother?
This is the
Ugly?
last
They,
I'm looking
yeah,
at.
they're ugly.
Oh, the
What
Strymals
kids
are
are
great.
those?
I don't
I don't
Strymon.
understand.
It looks like they took a
Oh,
tire
yeah,
and
Strymon.
put fur on
I would
it.
totally wear a Strymmal.
So he wears his yarmulke. He's wearing his yarmulke and his.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, thank you.
They're super expensive.
Any Orthodox
Whoa,
Jews
I
out
have
there,
a
take them
question.
off. They're ugly.
Okay.
I'm not rabbinic.
All right, that's it. I'm dressing in black and wearing a Strymmal.
Yeah, I love
No,
that.
you're
No,
not.
no,
No way. I will hide that sucker.
Oh, they're nice. Anyway, so your yarmulke was taken off. They put frisbee with it. They threw it to the ground. Thank God for that one kid that stood against you. But did anything else happen in this church against us after this spark of the pastor's father-in-law saying, you know what? God's really done with Israel.
Just a small thing like kicking us out entirely.
Oh, they kicked us out. Okay.
Well, they didn't kick us out because he said he didn't want to kick us out. But he
But-
said we couldn't do anything else.
Well, he
yeah.
called us a thorn in his
He
side.
said we were
was a
not allowed
thorn
to
in his
speak
side.
in the church. We weren't allowed to ask questions. We weren't allowed to do any of the ministries. We were removed from everything. We could enter the building and sit there quietly and leave, but that is all. So,
Yeah.
but he didn't, quote unquote, kick us out. Okay, question. The whole thing was weird, right? And I remember your mom and I sitting with the pastor and his wife for hours and trying to talk and trying to clear this up. And it seemed the more we talked, the less they understood. It was very bizarre, obviously spiritual, looking back on it. What happened? Give me, just in a few seconds, a few sentences, what happened here?
I think, no, sorry, my voice is all like, my ears popped, so my voice is all like creaky to me.
Yeah, I think there's just a little too much going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I think what happened was this pastor got. There was a pastor who apparently wasn't strong enough in himself. So when this pastor-in-law came in and started messing things up, he felt probably like
He felt pressure.
he felt pressure to follow him. So I think he immediately just caved into all anti-Semitism to the point that you, mom, or any of us pushing back would be seen as you're coming against the church, you're coming against all this. So
Right.
excuse me, good goodness. I think it's definitely like I think he was definitely anti-Semitic, but I also think he was just being a joke. Like, I mean, I would definitely call him anti-Semitic, but like, it was just spinelessness, I think.
Now, before this happened, would you ever have guessed that the pastor, his wife, or some people in the church were anti-Semitic?
At the time, no.
We didn't really know them. We couldn't know.
I mean,
You don't know until you
Pretty
know.
nice and
Yeah, I mean, they were always very kind to us, and we to them. So this begins to lend itself to the belief that anti-Semitism is always there. It's just under the surface, right?
Something
Yeah.
has to draw it out.
And something
It's-
draws it out, right?
I mean, it's almost like
Is that paranoid?
No, it's
No.
what happened.
it's.
why I
I
don't
think
like
it's
cultists.
human nature. I think that, like, we were watching this thing yesterday on YouTube, and it was something about the crossing the line with jokes and stuff. But I found it interesting, and I feel like this is similar because if one of the comments they made was, I didn't want to laugh until the person that they were talking about laughed because it gave them permission. Does that make sense? Like, if the joke was about a Jewish person and there was a Gentile and a Jewish person sitting together, and the Gentile was like, I don't want to laugh unless the Jewish person laughs, if the joke was towards a Jewish person. Well, I feel like anti-Semitism, one, is taught. I mean, it's not the first time in that denomination that we have come across anti-Semitism.
No, that is true.
Because, wearing the prayer shawl and things like that.
That was a different denomination.
That was the same one.
Yep, nope. We'll talk about it later. But
Well,
it
they're
was a different
sister.
one.
They're
They're sister denominations,
yeah.
but it was technically a different one, yeah.
So technically, we haven't, it wasn't the first time we've experienced that. And second, it's taught or it's not taught. The ignorance of the relationship that the Bible has to the Jewish people is not taught. It's not understood. People are jealous for some reason, and I think that it needs to be spawned by something. There
You mean
needs to be
sparked by something,
sparked
right?
by
Yeah.
something because people tend to not want to view like that joke, don't want to say what they want to really say or think unless somebody else says it first, and then they feel like they have permission to do it.
So that really begs the question then. You guys experienced this, all of you, firsthand, as well as we, of course, your mom and I. What did that do to your view of Christians in general?
I do not typically like Christians or churches.
I mean, I don't like to talk about Christians because they can't really defend themselves. No, I'm talking
Hello, we're back.
Yeah.
Wait.
So,
Like, to be honest,
Well,
yeah.
honestly, I
Oh wait,
I like-
one at a time. Let's do it.
To be
Joshua, go
honest,
first. And then-
the only Christians I actually trust and like is this family and a small group of friends.
Okay.
I don't like any churches. I don't like.
So it sort of turned you off to churches in general and Christianity specifically. Yeah.
I
Benjamin.
consider myself Jewish before Christian.
I talk a lot about Christians, but what I'm saying is like I don't like to Okay, I like to. I don't really care. Like I think at the time being a teenager, I definitely like it was like, oh well, these Christians don't like us, and they say these things and they don't correct themselves, and it's like. So I guess that obviously it messed with my interpretation of Christians, and I mean
Yeah.
I don't blame them, but I blame them.
Did it sort of turn you off to Christianity?
I think so, because like you guys identify as Christians, so I guess there's definitely that like clash. But I think it definitely soured Christians. Not necessarily as like I think even at the time I was like not all Christians are like this, but like
Good.
it definitely did not help, especially when I was a little bit older. It didn't help.
Well, I know
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. John.
Yosef, what did that do for you and the idea of Christians and Christianity, if anything?
That they're all freaking idiots. They don't know what they're talking about, which is objectively true.
Could you say that louder, please? We barely picked that up.
Christians are idiots and they don't know what they're talking about.
Because of this experience, you saw that.
Yes.
I'm just
Because of
asking.
this,
Did this experience with Christians and your interaction with them, with this whole thing, it took about a year. This whole thing evolved or devolved. Did that have any effect on you at all about your views of Christianity or Christians?
It definitely added fuel to the fire.
Did it? Okay, Hannah.
Well, I thought they were nice when we first got there, but I wouldn't trust them unless they're actually telling the truth.
Yeah, I agree.
Being
People need to tell the truth. Yeah. Did it affect you at all?
I think it did. I think one of the things that it did for me was it helped. It kind of like sparked a flame of like, okay, someone who calls himself a Christian, you know, that title Christian or Christianity really needs to be examined, because a lot of people call themselves Christians, but yet they turn their backs on the Jewish people, or they do these kind of things just because. I mean, it wasn't because we did anything wrong. It was because of what our statements were, like, hey, this is the truth. This is what God says, and that pastor doing that while you're in a Bible study where you're supposed to feel safe and you're supposed to iron sharpen iron. You're supposed to be amongst fellow believers, and yet he felt the need to rile you up and make you upset or frustrated. I don't know what his goal was with that, but that to me doesn't seem like a safe place. And to me it felt like, and I started to recognize the fact that we really need to put the churches that we go to under a microscope, because we can't just sit there and go to a church and just because they call themselves Christian or just because they say something, you have to really put them under a microscope. Are you going to follow the scriptures? Are you going to teach about the truth about Israel and not the lies that, so it kind of brought to the surface the fact that we all really need to, as we identify as Christians, to examine our lives and say, hey, are we living the truth? Or are we living what the denomination wants us to live? Or are we not we, but whoever is in charge? God says that teachers have a great responsibility. And if you're a pastor or a teacher, you need to make sure that you're teaching the truth, because you're responsible. And so now my kids. And then when we brought it up, the frustrating thing was when we brought it up, the one thing the pastor said was, well, they were like that when we got here. But this is the same church or same denomination or same, it's all over the Christian church. We want people that are broken in our church, and we want people that are hurting. Well, our children were hurting.
Wait, they said that about your kids, that we were like that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wait, I didn't know that. Is that
Yeah.
Yes. And then he says, we're a thorn in
I
their
know.
side.
You
Well,
guys were the most helpful kids in the entire
Yeah.
You say we
congregation.
were like what?
Because we were saying our kids were, having challenges, and with faith and trying to hold on to. I don't know, something had happened, and they, you guys were upset about it, and he was like, well, they were like that when they got here,
How would we know that?
and my thinking is,
Wait,
okay, you're the one who's sitting there saying you want the broken and the
Yeah.
downtrodden and the homeless and the ones
Yeah.
with all these problems
Yeah,
in
so-
your church.
They're soft. They knew us and they have helped us.
You
That's
would
the point
think.
she's
Yeah.
making. Yeah.
And that is the whole
So-
point. And don't say that. Don't put yourself in that position if you don't want. Yeah, we're not homeless. We didn't look like we came from the streets or drug addicts, but there are still people that look normal, or relatively put together that are struggling. And they didn't want that. They don't want that. They just say that.
Everybody is struggling.
Yeah,
Everyone
everyone is
struggles.
struggling. There's
Regardless
all-
of how
yeah.
together they look, everyone has a struggle.
Yeah.
It's called life. So, all right. So you guys have experienced firsthand then this sort of subtle but aggressive undertow of anti-Semitism. And it wasn't just, like, we're not going to serve, matzo ball soup or something. It was, God's done with Israel. You really don't belong. You killed Jesus. Really dark stuff
And we'll
that
do
has
it
haunted
again.
our people.
If they say stupid stuff, they get stupid answers.
This stuff has haunted our people again for millennia and sort of nipped at our heels everywhere we've gone. And most all the time, it's at the hands of the church. This is Christian anti-Semitism. So, is there anywhere in the Bible that says that Christians, Gentiles, need to support and love Israel?
Yes.
Where?
I don't know the verse, but I do know because I remember our wonderful friend. No, I can't remember.
Candace Owens.
No,
No. We need to pray for Candace Owens.
I'm totally lost his name. He lives in Maryland. In that,
Don't dox.
Andrea is his wife.
Fred.
Fred. Well, he first met us.
There are millions of Freds in
He
Maryland.
he dropped into the synagogue, and he goes, and he quoted that scripture, and he says, "We're supposed to support."
Ah, okay.
Israel, but I can't remember the
it's
verse.
in Romans.
Oh, okay.
So we have a dear friend while we were serving at the synagogue in Philadelphia who was a Gentile man. He literally just showed up one day and said, "Hi, I'm a Gentile. I'm a Christian. The Bible says we're supposed to love Israel. I'm here to bless you because I want to be blessed by God." And he's still a fan of the family today, a decade later.
Mm-hmm.
He started doing everything. He would contribute money. He would do building projects for free. He would grab his other friends and drag along to help with anything that we needed at the synagogue. You guys remember Fred, of course. Yeah. Yeah. And he's still in touch today and still tries to help us any way he can because he knows that those who bless Israel will be blessed and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And that's from Genesis.
I know, but Genesis what?
Those who bless Israel shall be blessed. Those who curse Israel shall be cursed. So this it's incumbent upon everyone on the planet, right? But especially the church. Why especially the church?
Because
Because
we're
they
God's
sold it
people.
Because
we're
they're supposed to be
born
people
again,
of
yeah.
God.
Mm-hmm.
And as you pointed out earlier, the church has our Messiah and our book and our faith and our God. What did I miss? You said I didn't.
I
hear
said
that.
they stole their God from us.
They stole it.
Yeah, Foster doing it.
All right, so let's look at a couple of verses here, right? And then we'll clarify some things. First of all, where in Genesis does it say that those who bless Israel shall be blessed and those who curse Israel shall be cursed?
I don't know. I'm in
Genesis 12,
Genesis.
3.
Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. We got to teach you how to use the internet, girl. So, Genesis
right,
chapter
yeah.
12, verse 3. Let me move our picture again so that you guys can.
Remember, I'm from the 1900s.
Yes, the 1900s. Yes. All right, Joshua, would you read Genesis 12:3 for us, please?
Yes.
And set the scene for us. Who's talking? Who's being addressed? Who wrote it? When was it written? Things like that.
Well, this was written by Moses.
By Moses. So we're looking at 3500 BC.
Mhm.
Okay.
And God is talking to Abraham about him and his descendants.
Okay, so Adoshem, blessed is he, is talking to Avram before his Abraham about the covenant that God is going to make with Avram.
Yep.
And what does he say in verse 3?
I'll start from verse 2 because that's good context.
Yeah, good.
I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And then all the families of the earth shall be blessed.
Okay.
And the families of the earth shall be
So this is Adoshem himself, right? This is the Lord speaking. I will bless those who bless you, Abraham, and your descendants. But aren't the Arabs descended from Abraham? Does this mean that those who curse the Arabs will be cursed?
No, because he
No.
only considers the line of Abraham to be through Isaac.
Yes. So later on in Genesis, God says to Abraham, take your son Isaac, your only son. But Abraham had Ishmael at the time, who was older,
Cool.
right? But God did not consider Ishmael Abraham's son. God considered Isaac, the son of promise, his son. So only those descendants through Isaac, and of course through that chain of covenant. Abraham, Isaac, who came next?
Jacob.
Then,
So, Judah.
yeah, all the
Yeah,
lines of
so-
Israel, all the
yeah,
12 tribes of
yeah.
Israel, right? Good. So only that line are the descendants to whom God is speaking here, which means the Jews. Does God mean this, or is this just something nice to say to make Abram feel fuzzy and warm
No,
inside?
this was a promise.
Can we prove it?
Yes.
Does history teach us the validity of this verse?
Yeah.
Tell me how.
Well, every nation that's gone against Israel has fallen.
Oh,
The rest is
interesting.
around.
So Genesis 12:3, right? Every nation that has come against us has been destroyed in one way or another. And I can't type, so. Okay. So what does that mean then for the Church of God, the people who claim to be born again, if they come against the Jewish people?
Yeah, it's not going to end well.
Will God destroy the church?
God will destroy that socks.
God will destroy that church. Absolutely, he will. And interestingly, that pastor and his family are no longer at that church. Yeah, they're gone. So, what other verses tell us about the obligation of people to Israel, the Jewish people?
I'm trying to
pretty sure
find
Paul
it. I
said
know
that-
it's Romans 11.
This is what Paul said about Gentile Christians were supposed to bring Jews to Christ too.
Yeah. Where does he say that?
Let me look it up.
Romans 11.
Romans 11.
I am
Yes.
on 11, but I can't find the verse
Yeah,
first.
very fast internet today.
Say again?
Very fast internet too. Just
Yes,
look it up fast.
yes.
I already had that.
Okay, let's look at another verse in Romans that is very controversial, right? And when I shared this verse with some other people, they became very upset. So, yeah. Romans chapter 3, verse 1. All right, set the setting for us. Romans, who wrote it? To whom was it written? When was it written?
Paul around 50 AD? 40 AD?
Yeah, about 50 to 60 AD. Yeah.
To the Christians in Rome.
Yeah. So Romans is written by Paul. Was it written to Gentile Christians or Jewish Christians?
Gentile.
Yeah, mainly focused to Gentile Christians, right? And Paul is explaining the Jewish people here and what it means to be a Jew and the obligations that Gentiles have to Jewish people. And here in verse 3, chapter 3, verse 1 and 2, Paul says, what then is the superiority of the Jew? Or what is the profit of circumcision? Much in every way. For first indeed that they were entrusted with the oracles of God, right? Which means the Torah and the revelations of God. But the word here, superiority, how is this usually translated in most Bibles?
Advantage.
Advantage. It's usually translated advantage. Why?
I think it's better because it literally means in Greek rank. With higher rank or
Yeah, superiority sounds
Yeah.
like snooty. You know,
Cloud
like
responsibility.
you know,
Yeah, it makes it
you're,
sound like a waste thing.
yeah. Well, it makes it sound like you're snobby.
It makes it
you
sound
know?
racist. I'm just like,
Okay. Well, Jews are an ethnicity.
Bible says.
So,
No, but it doesn't sound racist. It sounds like they're snooty. They're like
Yeah.
the rich kids of the
I
block.
beg your pardon.
No, I'm not saying they're rich. I'm just because we're obviously
in
poor Jews, so that we just totally broke that mold. But
poor Jews
it
for the
makes
win.
it sound like there's like it's like you're royalty or you're a pauper. You know.
Yeah.
You know. So
So for insecure Gentiles, it'll just set them off.
well, I could see. You know.
Okay, but here with the word, according to Thayer's Greek, which is a wonderful resource, is perissos, which means over and above, or superadded, or extraordinary, superior, surpassing, have an advantage, preeminence, or superiority, right?
Well, we do have an advantage because Christ came and established the Jewish people. No, well, God, Christ in God, because He showed Himself, you know,
Yeah.
to Abraham. But we do have a advantage.
Well,
because
it's not
we
just an
were-
advantage. We have a superiority.
Well, it's like you know, the creator of you know the electric car. Well, the first person to create the electric car, of course, is going to be superior in electric car making because they were the first. They they set it off. So, you know, when people get upset about that, it's just the fact that that was a nation established by God for God's purpose to bring in the Messiah eventually,
Right.
and but the problem I think that most people have is they realize that nowhere in their superiority or advantage has God ever forgotten about the Gentiles. Because he says, even in the law, that on Shabbat, if you have a Gentile or a stranger in your midst, you bring them into your home.
Of course.
So He's always provided for the Gentiles. He's always provided. And I think when people hear superior or an advantage, we get that first world insecurity, like, what do you mean you have advantage? Does that make you better than us? You know, it's like kids on the playground. It's
Well,
like,
it's interesting. God did not say that we're better than Gentiles.
Right.
He just said we're superior to Gentiles. That doesn't mean better. That just means we were entrusted with the oracles of God. So that makes us superior. It's like in the military, right? Perfect. The idea of rank. You have a captain and you have a sergeant. The captain is superior to the sergeant in rank, not better. Right. They're both men. They both bleed the same. They both fight on the same side against a common enemy. It just makes the captain higher ranking. That's all this means.
Yeah.
But it's still something that God gives to the Jewish people. Paul was writing this to Gentiles because he wants the Gentiles to know that the Jews outrank them.
And this is New Testament. I don't know.
This is New Testament.
I don't know why that bothers me. It's like people are going to be like all anti-Semitic, but Christians, I mean, will be all
They
anti-Semitic.
only read New Testament and stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, well, even in the New Testament, like if you just take the New Testament, it says that. So
Is there something else in Romans chapter 1 where, again, God is talking about this superiority of the Jews?
Probably.
He sort of obliquely refers to it.
Well, before we move on to that, we also have to remember that when, like with your rank system, the responsibility for each of those ranks is different.
Yeah.
And the consequence for each of those ranks is different. The major is not going to suffer the same consequence the captain would, right?
Absolutely.
The major would have way more responsibility and way more consequence than a corporal or a sergeant would. So we also have to remember that. A lot of people are like, you know, and I have to confess that before I got saved and we would talk about the Bible, you know, I felt kind of unfair, you know, why did the Jews get all this stuff, you know? It doesn't make sense and that's not fair. And I didn't know because I wasn't taught, you know, that Jews still needed Jesus. I thought they just went to heaven, you know? I thought they got a free ticket
Wouldn't
into
that be
heaven
nice?
just because. But the reality is that their advantage or their superiority or their position in the lineup of of God's word and God's, I guess, call for His people, that they have a grave responsibility.
Yeah.
And that if they fail at it, it means, like he says, if it's not life from the dead, then what,
Right, absolutely. That's Romans 11.
Yeah.
So we have this deeper responsibility before God because the oracles and revelation of the one true God of all creation was given first to the Jewish people, right? Interesting. Romans chapter 1. To what verse am I alluding there?
16.
Romans 1:16. Let's
Excuse
get
me.
there and let's see what we have. All right. Joshua, tell me about Romans 1:16. Go ahead.
For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first, and to the Greek.
Let me share with you how I've heard this first preached in Gentile churches.
No.
For I am not ashamed of the good news of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation to everyone who believes.
They leave out the last part.
Period. They leave out the last part of the verse. To the Jew first, and then to the Greek or the Gentile. What is Paul saying here?
That there is
If we need to
an
get
order
out,
of operation.
There's an order of operation. There's a ranking system.
Yeah.
There's a system of superiority. This doesn't make Gentiles the gutter scum. That's not what Paul's saying. Paul is just saying to the Jew first. Later on, he says judgment will start, first in the house of God, of course, but with Jews. And then Gentiles were held more accountable, right? There's a deeper responsibility. What else does this mean? If I'm a Gentile Christian and I see this verse, do I have an implicit responsibility?
yeah.
Yes.
What is that?
If the Gentile church wants to get their act together, we have to help Israel get their act together.
First.
Well,
So if a Gentile Christian sees a Jew on the street and a Gentile on the street, and neither of them have heard the gospel, that Gentile Christian should go to whom first?
The Jew.
The Jew. Why?
because then the Jew is supposed to go to the Gentile.
Yes, because if the falling away of the Jew means the salvation of the Gentiles, what shall the restoration of the Jews mean but life from the dead?
And
Right.
you also have to remember that this is Paul writing to the Romans. It wasn't Paul writing to, the Hebrews. He was talking to the Gentile people. And if you recognize also that he's not saying don't go to the Gentiles. He never once left them out. He didn't just say for everyone who believes for the Jews first. Period.
Yeah.
So God through Paul made let the Gentiles know that they also are important to God.
Absolutely.
But there's an order of things. But the significance is this is a Jewish rabbi
Yeah, Paul.
talking to a Gentile church.
Yeah,
He wasn't talking to his own people.
right.
He wasn't saying Jews, you need to go to Jews so that, everyone
Right.
else can get saved. He was talking to the church. He was talking to the Romans. That is significant
It's massive.
in the messenger.
So we've been to a lot of different Christian churches, not just as a family, but individually. I've been invited to speak in the past for many years. And many churches have this thing on their wall where they're supporting missionaries. And they support and God bless missionaries, and God bless, they need support. Missionaries to Asia and to Africa and to South America and inner city missionaries in the United States. I have been to one church, one, out of all those years of going to churches that had a missionary to the Jewish people. One. That's it. The church is failing us, right?
At least
That's-
in America. We're
Yeah.
talking about the American
Yeah, the American
church.
Western Church.
Yeah.
The American Western Church is failing us. And they don't care. They somehow think, like you thought before you were saved, that we get this free pass with God, and therefore they don't have to reach us. That's also a form of anti-Semitism.
Well, that's a big thing in the church, too, is you don't really need to evangelize.
Right, it's a lie.
Yeah.
But we have run out of time, unfortunately, this week, so we must pick it up. I know. We must pick it up next week, so let me bring our picture back
I
here.
just want to ask one thing, because
Hello, we're back.
you're a Gentile mom, and I wanted to ask, what you think, when you had, because you got married to a Jew, and when you had Jewish kids, or Jewish half kids, what did you think, did you think there'd be some kind of clash? Now, I know you adopted a lot of the Jewish customs in order to keep a unit of a family, but, what did you initially think? about that, and so my voice is cracking.
First of all, I'm sure she thought, wow, that hunk of Jewish man,
Oh,
I need him in my life.
Definitely.
You're welcome, is all I
And
have to say.
is that a weird question? It's like,
It's not a weird question, and because I knew Christ, and I knew that. Well, to me, I knew there was a difference in our ethnicities, but there wasn't difference in Christ, right? I mean, so whatever God said in His Word, we would be, we would be walking together.
yeah.
Because we won't go against Scripture. But with the kosher foods and, Shabbats, which really, I mean, it doesn't say to celebrate the Shabbat, it just says to do the Shabbat. We've had our discussions, and, I've lifted it up for the Lord. And, the one thing I remember struggling with when we first got married was kosher food. Now, I wasn't a big ham eater, but I did like pepperoni pizza and salami.
Is the best.
I wasn't a ham, or I didn't really eat pork chops all that much either.
Not really.
So that didn't really bother me, but it was because Italians are big on sausage. Italians are big on pork products. So that was a challenge for me. But then I thought, well, if we're going to have children, then they can't see. I mean, every once in a while I would go out and I would have like Scrabble at IHOP, but I would never be in the home.
That's true, yeah.
So it's compromise, but that's what marriage is. No matter what your ethnicities are, you have to compromise.
Was it easier, because that's more of a cultural thing, the kosher. Was it easier because he believed in Jesus?
Kosher's commanded in Scripture.
No, I know what I'm saying, though, is like, because she doesn't have to follow that. But she
True,
gave it up
true.
To keep the family.
Why would you ever give up pepperoni pizza?
But like my question,
They have kosher pepperoni pizza in Israel.
but like
It was hard.
chocolate pepperoni is better. I do not like that.
Oh, it's
nasty
delicious.
stuff. But
It's
like,
wonderful.
was it easier because he was also a Christian? Because
It was easier. Now, if he was Orthodox, there would be a whole different.
If I was Orthodox, you wouldn't have married me.
I wouldn't have married you, but
They're not allowed to touch
And I
the-
wouldn't have married you.
if for chance we were together and you still had like
Like a
you
Ben
left the
Shapiro style
orthodoxy but you
Orthodox.
still had those, there would have been a lot more fights, I think, because I personally I like cheeseburgers.
Cheeseburgers.
And-
The Orthodox Jews can't mix meat and dairy at all.
And also
Because of a
to
misinterpretation of a passage in
God
Torah.
bless him. That's some self-control.
Like you saw that boil a goat in his mother's milk or something.
Yeah,
How do
they
you
have 2 kitchens and 2 sets of dishes.
and that's the
It's just-
thing too is
it's ridiculous.
and not only just food wise but the attitude towards their wives, or towards women in general.
Yeah.
That we would have had a real struggle with
It's medieval.
because there was no way. I mean, I'm hard-headed and
What?
pretty strong-willed, I would think,
It's definitely like.
but
Oh, sorry.
we would have fought with that. I don't think we would have lasted
No,
if we were
definitely not.
Orthodox. No.
I think
L'chaim.
that's the thing. Like with really fall spectrum Christians, like I'm talking Amish style, the wives.
I don't know how the Amish treat their
Well, I'm
wives.
trying to think of like the most like conservative, traditional only.
Well, Orthodox Judaism is way beyond that, though.
No,
If-
but-
there's something called Frum. Have you heard that term?
No.
Frum Orthodox Judaism, which is like almost militant, hyper-conservative, hyper-Orthodox.
And that's what I'm talking about. Is like even on other religions,
And
like
it's
Islam
awful.
or
It's awful.
hyper Christianity,
It's a cult.
like Judaism has its branches of like women can't drive or women can't, and I don't think I've ever seen women not, but I'm talking about like women.
Nothing
they
is as
can't-
bad as Arab.
they
or
can't
Muslim
disagree.
wives.
Muslims, the way they treat their wives.
There's an
yeah.
Orthodox tradition where you can divorce your wife if she burns your food, and I
Yeah.
think that's.
Yeah. Well, we would have divorced. We would have been divorced the first day I made
Aw,
something.
you tried your best.
I know. It was a stupid stove.
There
It
was
only
no-
had like one
I know.
degree.
I never remember. Yeah.
But anyway,
I mean,
When we first got married, we lived in a tiny, tiny studio apartment where the bedroom was the living room, was the kitchen, was the
Was
dining room,
everything,
and
yeah.
the bed came out of the wall. and
yeah.
The stove was the size of a laptop, and
I know.
it didn't have any temperature gauges on the thing. And you were so proud of yourself making your first meal as my wife.
I
and
know. And
Badly burnt the meatloaf.
oh, it was horrible. It was
But-
like one thin layer. And poor Troy, he's like trying to pick at the thin layer.
It was delicious. That thin layer was very yummy. Thank you.
Great.
On that note, we have to end. Unfortunately, we'll continue this next week. The turbulent subject of anti-Semitism in the church. We touched on some verses today about the obligation of people in general, but the church specifically to Israel and to the Jewish people. I use those two terms separately because I mean the Jewish people, I mean the Jewish people around the world. When I say Israel, I mean the nation of Israel, the socio-cultural political entity in the Middle East. So, on that note, thank you guys for your time. Yes, a lively discussion today. Even Yosef said something today.
I know.
I know. Yeah. And thank you for your time as well. I pray Hashem bless you, right? In the coming weeks, so we say Shavua Tov,
Shavua Tov.
which means
Have a good week.
have a good week, and Shabbat Shalom for today, which means
Have a
Peaceful
peaceful rest.
rest to you. And I pray that God will give you a peaceful rest. Please don't forget to pray for the salvation of the Jewish people and peace in Jerusalem. Shalom.
Bye.